Hey, good day. This is Dan Barrett from UNDE Local 65, and today's presentation for our orientation is on the duty to represent. So I'm going to go in a little bit of detail about the roles and responsibilities of the union, and hopefully that'll give you a better idea of the rights in relation to representing members and our duties and obligations in that regard. Okay, so basically we have a union representatives are elected, selected, or claimed, or appointed by the local. So management doesn't actually appoint representatives unless the union has essentially said, give us a recommendation because we can't get somebody. So in the case of, say, for example, occupational safety and health, we may ask management to nominate somebody if we can't find someone because management not providing enough support to those individuals to give them confidence that they'll actually be able to do their duty to represent. So, so that's your first point, and they serve the interests of the member, and they uphold the applicable bylaws and the Constitution of the Union, and ensure the utilization and compliance to the collective agreement. We also verify compliance with departmental directives in the course of reviewing some of the procedures, especially within the LMRC type structure, trying to address things. Now, management is required to be advised by the local of representatives and their jurisdiction. This is currently done by our annual report, and representatives' selection to committees are ratified at the next general membership meeting. So that'll be for us in May. So the way our local operates in January, we do our committees, and they kind of split. So we do half of our committees one year and the other half the next. So this January we were looking at the folks in the LMRC committee, which is the bargaining. Next January we'll be looking at our OSH folks, and essentially so those are our along with the steward body. They're the main folks that are doing the representation piece, so the duty to represent primarily falls on them and the executive. We're just going to go over these first ones. So you see there's actually three here. So the member can go to the steward, they can go to their labor and management relations, or UMCC rep, or their occupational and safety health rep. So within this duty to represent, each of those folks have different roles and responsibilities, and the duty that is required in each has different implications. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through some of the stuff really quick. Roles and responsibilities of the JOSH rep, as they're defined by the Canada Labour Code Part 2. Within D&D, we also have our general safety guidelines, and there's actually separate books that deal with different levels of responsibility and the duties that folks have. So for an OSH rep, for example, each month there's a requirement to do an inspection such that by the end of the year, the entire area that the OSH rep might be responsible for is going to be covered off. Similarly, there's a duty to report anomalies to management, to attend JOSH meetings where there's enough civilians within a particular area to warrant that kind of a structure, to investigate accidents and incidences. So the duty to represent here really augments management's responsibility. It doesn't basically put all the onus on the representative, but essentially management is, in order to fulfill their requirement to ensure that the workplace is safe, is essentially being, helped by the OSHREP, and the requirements related to that ensure that management is essentially going to be taking full responsibility for the health and safety folks. And the rep is there to give voice to concerns, especially where people feel uncomfortable voicing the concern themselves. So this is the aspect of confidentiality. So for the duty to represent, you're still, you can represent individuals in the OSH side of it. You're really representing everybody, anything that might impact them. So the areas that people are working in, the routes they come from, say, the parking lot to the workspace, lunchrooms, washrooms, things of that nature. So those aspects of in your duty to represent, you have to make sure that you do consultation, and the members need to have a degree of confidence that what they tell you in confidence is going to be basically expressed in a manner that's not going to come back on them. Because the members themselves have responsibilities as well to report things. But if they don't necessarily know something, then you can't turn around and say, well, ignorance is not an excuse in the eyes of the law, but if somebody actually doesn't realize that a hazard exists, then it's hard for them to report it. But as an OSH rep, you become aware of different hazards, and if the employee becomes aware of the hazard, they can report that to you or to their manager. But if they do report it to you, you must report it to their management, and as soon as possible, so that you mitigate the risk. And frankly, if the risk is big enough, you need to advise the member. Your duty is to advise them that they have the right to refuse dangerous work. And it's a fairly convoluted process right now, but the bottom line is, as a representative, your duty is to advise the members of what their rights are. And so you need to kind of be current on some of this stuff, get your training from management, pursue learning opportunities and orientation stuff related to the subject so that you keep current. And you need to set a little bit of time aside if you're going to be doing these representative roles to continue the learning process, to whether it's being current on administrative aspects, because a lot of the stuff that you're actually doing as a representative carries over into a role if you ever became a manager, because you're going to be exposed to certain things that are managerial responsibilities, and as a representative you need to make sure that the managers are actually fulfilling their responsibilities. So by default you end up figuring out, or you become exposed to what managers' responsibilities are. So on the health and safety side, a member is going to come to you. A recommendation is going to be made to management, and then management has the responsibility to respond back to the representative. And if that response is acceptable, then management's general safety organization is going to effect the required change. If it's not acceptable, the item may be referred to the D&D National Safety Policy Committee, or the Canada Labour Code, or Canada Labour may be contacted to ensure the appropriate resolution is implemented, and determined if there's a problem with the way in which a particular workplace is being safe. That's a refusal to work again, right? Where if there's a problem, you could have a fine of up to $1 million here. So that's the teeth behind the occupational safety and health rep, and their responsibilities. You can't really abuse that kind of stuff, right? It's a serious. Managers can go to jail if they don't actually fulfill their duties. And as a representative, you have to ensure that you're meeting your responsibilities. You have to ensure that you meet your responsibilities, so that the whole system is going to be working properly. Checks and balances. So again, the second piece of it is the labor management relations rep, and that's defined by the joint LMRC policy within D&D, as well as the Public Service Modernization Act and Treasury Board consultation policies. So again, the member is going to go to LMRC dealing with primarily issues around the workplace that you have O groups type meetings where you bring stuff up related to the workplace, but some of the larger issues that can't really be handled at the local level, they're going to be addressed through the LMRC things where there's maybe a requirement to strike a committee to go after a particular issue and resolve it. So in that context, again, and this one too, you have regular meetings for. So in the OSH side of the house, if you have enough people, like around 20 folks, 50, about 20, if you have 20 civilians within the work groups, you have an OSH committee, and again, you have the requirement to meet regularly. Currently, it's 8 times a year. So and at those meetings, again, recommendations, responses, you create some kind of committee structure that's going to be effectively addressing the issues. On the LMRC, again, you have this committee structure, and where a committee doesn't really exist, again, same kind of a concept with OSH applies for us. So we'll meet locally with a particular command that may not necessarily be associated with, for example, our Petawawa command, and basically address issues locally with them. Or again, some of those organizations have their own LMRCs, like to address concerns related to their command structure or their formation, where it goes up to different chains. So within the LMRC structure, the rep is going to be, in order to fulfill your duty to represent, you're going to have to consult on issues, right? Reach out to people and actually talk to people, and pursue a perspective so that when you're actually at a meeting, you can actually represent an issue to management appropriately. You have a meeting where you raise issues. If those issues are, if they're resolved, then the minutes are going to reflect how the issue was resolved. So you're going to have a record of this. Again, you do the same sort of a record in the JOS side, but again for the 8 meetings. But in the LMRC side, so again you've got that whole formal record, and that way you create the transparency so that if there's changes that people need to know, it's going to get out there. Same thing on the health and safety side. You've got your 5-minute safety talks that are periodically, like every week, supposed to be done. And it keeps the mindset there, that safety is important. For LMRC, you need to create those minutes. So you've got a formal record, and people can go back to those and say, okay, well, this was essentially this is where we rolled out this particular change, or this is where we were made aware of how we implemented this particular change. And so the minutes become important, and it's the transparency piece, so people gain confidence that the system's in control. But again, if the local LMRC can't really address something, then there's a regional structure for the LMRC, and again, if so that regional LMRC minute structure, it's got to be visible. There has to be transparency there, so that the folks, if they do push something up in that direction, they can get the status of where it is and how it's been addressed. And again, if the regional structure can't address it, then you're up at the departmental level, at the UMCC there. So again, these things, in the case of the UMCC issues, most of those are posted up on the UNDE website. So become aware of some of the stuff that's up there, and keep current. You become aware of some of the issues that are within your command structure, and it'll help you do your job better and be more innovative, or more valued, and effectively help make the government operate better, make your organization operate better. So The last one again is the steward piece. So the stewards defined for PSAC in our steward handbook. And these roles, they include investigating alleged violations of the collective agreement and recommending an appropriate response to situations, responding to queries or referring such matters to a union subject matter expert and relaying the answers back to the member, achieving you're also responsible in this case to advise the chief steward and the executive of developments on issues of concern. The executive in that particular case are becoming advised on concerns so that they can track trends, and essentially, may end up, some grievance matters may end up going into bargaining, and the bargaining demands that end up going forward because you have problems with interpretation of the collective agreement or issues that are not necessarily covered by the collective agreement. So those things are all important to keep the system going, and our duty to represent is also to make sure that we are appropriately taking steps, like all steps, to resolve issues and make our harmonious workplace. You've got this aspect at the beginning of the collective agreement, mutually beneficial organizations, where we respect management respects us, and the employees, have an opportunity to develop and, meet the challenges and, get the rewards out of work that are, why we are public servants. The duty to represent also includes making sure people know who the reps are. So for us, those representatives are identified up on the UNDE webpage. So you have your executive here, Carolyn, Sheila, Cheryl, myself, Saul, Dwayne, and then the committee reps. So you look at the committees again, then we have, there's finance, grievance, Josh, bargaining, action, recreation, welfare, and memberships. And again, these are all up on the UNDE website. If you click on the little plus sign, it drops down for the actual members of the committee, and you can use the DWAN system to look up the members and fire them off a quick email or give them a shout at their workplace too. So again, in the case of finance, those representatives are actually selected at our AGM, being the two auditors and our treasurer. Grievance committee has got the chief steward and the different stewards from different areas. And again, this is where you've got the primary responsibility of a steward is to represent in their primary area, but there are circumstances where a steward may be called on to represent in other areas, and that's if there's an issue there with management, then this needs to be resolved in a constructive way. And if management can recommend somebody else to represent them, great. But if not, then we have to deal with the resources that are available to us, the region and beyond. So hopefully that explains to you the structure of our local. And if you have any questions, again, you can head up to the UNDE website. Other than that, give us a shout, and we'll be glad to help you. Give us a shout, we'll be glad to help you. Thanks, and Happy New Year. So again, the bargaining committee, set up with the folks that are in the different commands with alternates, so that we make sure that there's a balance in the LMRC type of structure between management and labor. And in addition to that, we've also got in the bargaining side some of the folks who have key responsibilities for particular portfolios, so they can track issues. The action committee was the third committee that was actually struck this January, and again, they deal with the different portfolios that are among the equity seeking groups, as well as the folks that are dealing with the political action stuff. So you've got the whole gamut of actions that are allowed by law and encouraged in order to get the voice of the union out there within the area and region and beyond. So hopefully that explains to you the structure of our local, and if you have any questions, again, you can head up to the UNDE website. Other than that, give us a shout. We'll be glad to help you out. Thanks, and Happy New Year.